was Phil Schneider, which sounds like Bill Grider. But Bill Grider, then maybe he's got a story you could tell us about, or a book he wrote, or a YouTube or something.
I will dig into that, and I don't know if his wife and them still live up just north of Albuquerque, the little town up there, just north of it. And but no, I knew him up until he passed away, and so I have no reason to doubt.
That's just a coincidence, then. It's just a coincidence. Yeah. But have you heard of the Phil Schneider story?
I have heard of a Bill Schneider, yes. But Bill Grider. Okay.
That's just a coincidence. They sound alike, and they worked on a similar underground base. And I should never assume anything that you're speaking of Dulce, but that is the most popular in Achuleta Mesa. Achuleta.
That's where the war went on, and they lost like 90-some servicemen, so he could have been one of them, you know.
Yeah, no, Bill Grider wasn't one of the young that died, but he died of cancer.
Involved situation.
Sure.
So that's how you get into history, because it's in the past, and somebody like Richard Dolan, a historian, would cite where he got his information. That's all Stanton Friedman was about. Was, please, Teresa, you're an investigator and you work for the government. He believed in me, but he also, now, he gave me the understanding that he believed Tom and I because it was our story. But he definitely wanted fact-finding. That's why he wanted the book I had, the MGA-12 book, and why he and I talked years and years ago. And when I walked in to talk to Jesse Marcel Sr. in Louisiana, he had told me another man had just been there. And we came in at midnight with the United States Navy gentleman. I was escorted with men in black because I was a psychic and I had been used for that particular person in the UFO story because I had skills. So I found it odd, and then later on I tracked it down, and Stanton Friedman and I compared notes, and he was the man. So when you go and you do history and you do fact-finding and you go firsthand, you don't know. You only know, like, there's a man, right, in the Jesse Marcel story. But we had a 2-year involvement there, Stan and I, putting that story together back in the day before Donald Berliner got involved. And that was one of his first writing partners. But see, y'all wouldn't know that stuff because I haven't said it, right?
I got a question for you. But how do we know that you aren't still in the CIA and you're trying to pick out those of us that need to be under control?
Well, number one, when I went to the CIA, I had the test, and they sent me letters saying I was never in the CIA. And the only time I ever worked for the government, they told me that I worked for the Department of Navy. Yet when I worked with my husband told me that his CIA handler, brought him my file. And this is all on radio, which, Tommy, anybody can go back and look in the 7 years. So if you want to go back and do an investigation on me, you can do it very simply by going back and finding the radio shows that are documented here. So as far as we don't know anything about anybody, really, even if I said I was not, would you believe me? So that is an individual heart chakra or a thought that each person has to understand, because as an investigator, I got paid. So you can't track the government's money. I've had a lady try, and even the Office of Personnel Management that I worked through, I did sign a contract with the Department of Navy, but the psychiatrist that interviewed me in Washington, D.C. in May '87, he stated that, do you mind if the CIA buys your contract from the United States Navy? Now, I said no, because I was talking to an old psychiatrist that was grilling me for my psychiatric eval. What would you have said, and what would you have thought?
Now, did you say no? no, you wouldn't mind if they did that, or no,
Yes,
you didn't want them?
That's what I said. I wouldn't mind because I was an investigator, and I wanted to investigate. And as far as I knew, the government was needing intelligence officers, and that's what I did. And I traveled before I ever went in '87. But remember, or maybe you don't know this, but May '67 is when I first did my papers. That's why Dr. Bruce Maccabee thought it would be a very interesting book if I ever wrote it, telling my truth. As
you still haven't got it published. Well, you still haven't published it, have you?
TJ,
but I don't know.
Let me say something about keeping track of your information. You also have to realize that information can be faked.
Oh, yeah.
Sources can be tampered with.
Look
because
at the
you
Bible.
found it in a file somewhere in the government filing system doesn't mean it's a real document.
No. People can misquote us, and then it goes into documentation. And the next thing you know, everybody believes that that's what we said, when in reality, it is not what I said.
And a clerk given $100 will go stick a paper in a file for you.
Yeah, or something else.
Well, let me tell you something, Ken, about Andrew Basiago. When I first talked to him, he told me his father worked for the CIA. So we talked for a very long time about Project Pegasus, or what I thought was Project Pegasus. But at that time, he never mentioned a jump room, and we talked a lot before he talked with Bernard Mendez. And Bernard Mendez came on our show, this show, it's documented here, and also a mad painter here, Thomas Becker, has interviewed Bernie Mendez. So there's stories out there. We have
10 hours.
Goodness.
You did 10 hours? Wow. That's
straight 10 hours.
Wow.
So we've already documented all this stuff before, and then Ken came on my show in 2016. So Ken, you're here too on my shows. I found them. So we have history here, folks, on everything that we're probably talking about tonight.
Well,
but the point I wanted to make about the CIA.
Mary's was not documented. It was straight live radio and no recording.
Oh, you're serious?
It was when we first started Revolution Radio.
Oh,
and so
you didn't record it?
Bummer.
Oh, man. Yeah, all that's lost.
Plenty of kind of stuff when we first started.
Oh,
don't
that's
tell me,
sad.
Don't tell me TJ, don't tell me that this has all been recorded tonight.
Of course it's been recorded. Everything I do is recorded. Well, on this show. That's why I do it, for archiving, but not for the CIA, although they don't need me to do it for them. They've got all the telephones and all the data and all the metadata, and, with the NSA, and that's all common knowledge. If not, folks, go watch all the YouTubes. There's plenty of first-hand information from first-hand agents, but I do
come
believe...
back in?
Yeah, go ahead, Tommy.
All right. Two things. I consider myself involved with the two most important UFO events that happened in the United States. One of them was what happened up at Wanacue, New Jersey. Tesla was working with DuPont. I got all the facts more than anybody. Sergio and I, we went to the libraries, went to the police department, we got every record, every file that was based on that. It's completely covered up because 9 months after they flooded the city, ships were going in and out of the reservoir for 9 months while the Army was stationed around it. But in the interim, in 1996, 200 UFO people were killed. But during that time frame, Sergio and I did a TV show called Strange Universe. And that was, we showed some videos and everything on that show. The day after, within a week, it was taken down, the show was taken off the air. They arrested John Ford. Now, John Ford's still in the nut house right now. Nobody will go near him. He was the head of MUFON on Long Island. And he went around with a Geiger counter. Most UFO people that have money have a Geiger counter. They check for radiation first to see if a ship landed there. A crop circle is radioactive. So that's why I say everything's radioactive. I'm not saying it's going to kill you, but it is radioactive. So getting back to the point, John Ford, when he filmed the ship crash on Long Island, it was the most incredible video I ever saw. It's probably the most incredible video of an actual ship crashed with the aliens laying around it. They got him in a nut house. He can't go to trial because what they said on public TV in New York and New Jersey, he had uranium, and he was going to kill Congress. He had a piece of uranium the size of a pin, or a dime, I should say, and he tested his Geiger counter before he went out to a crop circle or a UFO landing, a sighting, and they arrested him saying he was going to put it in toothpaste and kill Congress. So he's still in jail. He's in the nut house. They won't let him go to trial because he sent that video 4 places in the world. They only get shown if he dies. So obviously they won't take him out. But again, back to the point of 1996 is even when Phil Schneider was killed, they took out a lot of the secret or lower UFO people that weren't super famous because of major, like they wanted to shut down the whole idea of it. But getting back to the Wanacue, New Jersey, that is an important situation that happened because Tesla worked with DuPont and Tesla was working with an alien race. During that time frame, they flooded the city. They built an underground. There was underground tunnels there, which they said it was. If you pull it up online, they show you pictures of trains supposedly going down these tracks where it was, but it was up in the mountains of Wanacue, and that's where Sergio and I did all our UFO stuff. It's government property. You get shot if you go on the land. It's completely closed off. But we went in there 5 days a week, filming ships, creatures. I mean, the whole mountain would light up at different times, and we had to hide and things. So, yeah, there was a lot hidden there. But that truth needs to come out because that's all based on after the Philadelphia experiment. And it was basically what happened after the Montauk Project was opening. I don't know if you know much about that or a lot about it. It was a very serious bad thing that the United States was doing. And during that time frame, they were taking children from all over the world and bringing them there and everything else. But as far as the facts, I went where the ship crashed. They tried to let the whole area burn on Long Island because it's flat land. Tried to burn where the ship actually crashed because it notched out all the trees for about 3/4 of a mile. And during that time frame, I don't know if you know this, in the United States, the police and the fire department cannot go into a UFO sighting. If a ship crashes, they have to block off the area, but they're not allowed inside it. That's under every book. I had 2 brother-in-laws cops, and they showed me it in the documents that they had to abide by their code. So basically, they're not allowed to see what's really going on either. But on Long Island, when it happened,
there are a lot to talk to an alien.
But, so we do learn from each other, right? We do learn whether we want to believe it or not. That's up to the individual, just like the listeners. And when you go back and listen, I hope you do. Ken, with you and me doing this with Ahmad and Tommy, you know, we can only support what we make each radio show, but it does get archived and it is recorded. So I want you to know that. And we can go back and check. That's checking,
right.
But all that's checking is the radio show, the date we had it, as long as I pay the bill. So I agree with Tommy. Things can go, and I agree with Ahmad. Just because we have, and Ahmad, and Ken, you know this, you were Marines, and I was Navy, and Ahmad was Navy. But do you remember when you got out and they'd ask you what all you did, and the girl or the guy sitting there typing what you say to put on your DD-214? I've seen it done.
Yes,
I've said it.
I still have it. That's true. I wanted to add something in there. You know, you talked about they were tracking you and seeing if you had put out information or they'd take you out and stuff. And I wanted to put out, you know, that's true. And you get threatened, and I was even threatened. But then the fact that I kept the documentation and records and then made it public to where they were available and in places where they didn't even know where they are, that's the only protection that I had. And unfortunately, the governments have done everything to try to keep control of the true facts, the true information, until, like the Brookings Institute said, that you know that the population of people couldn't handle information, not to make it public. And by and large, most of that is still in place, although it's coming down to where the governments now realize that they have to allow the information to be made public so that we could have the full disclosure. So we're making progress. Just hang in there, everybody. I'm still doing my part, and I know you're doing yours. So I just want to add that the documentation and pictures and things, if you make it public and press stuff, then that's your safety. That's my safety button. Okay?
Right. I think that's good. And for those that can do, those that can't, I had my people try to track in the